Welcome to EduRev. We're going to tackle a really fascinating topic: citizenship, rights, and duties. Now, as we get started, I want you to know something. I'm not just here to help you memorize facts for tests. My real goal is to help you truly understand what it means to be an active, responsible member of our country. We are going to break these concepts down step by step so you can easily visualize exactly what you need to know. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, who exactly is a citizen? Second, our 6 fundamental rights. Third, our fundamental duties. Fourth, fighting discrimination with inclusion. And finally, a quick summary and a look at the EduRev app. Let's get moving. Section 1. Who is a citizen? Now, before we get bogged down in the legal definitions, I want you to ask yourself a question. What does it actually mean to belong to a country? Okay, let's break down a classic exam trap. I see students confuse these two terms all the time. On one hand, a resident is simply someone who lives in a place. Pretty simple, right? But a citizen, that is someone who has formal legal membership of a country. Citizenship isn't just about where you sleep at night. It equals your legal identity plus your social responsibility. It requires your active participation. It means fulfilling your duties like paying taxes and exercising your rights like questioning unfair practices. Remember, not every resident is a citizen. A citizen can even live in a completely different country. Moving right along to Section 2, our 6 fundamental rights. Let's dive into the freedoms that allow us to actually live with dignity. Alright, so the Indian Constitution provides a framework of 6 broad categories of fundamental rights. And these are legally enforceable from Articles 14 to 32. We've got the right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and the right to constitutional remedies. Now, don't panic. As your teacher, I'm telling you right now, you do not need to memorize every single article line by line for your exam. What I really want you to master is the broad framework. Just understand what these rights protect you from: unfair treatment by others and unfair actions by the government. Now, this is absolutely crucial. Notice the difference between equality and equity. They sound similar, right? But equality means everyone receives the exact same support, regardless of where they start. Equity, on the other hand, means everyone gets the support they specifically need to be on a fair playing field, which actually accounts for historical discrimination. A prime example of equity in action: the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign. It specifically builds awareness and support for girls' education to balance the scales. Make sense? Let's move to the right to life and see how this builds into something totally fascinating. Did you know that rights aren't always just for humans? Seriously, in 2017, the Uttarakhand High Court actually declared the rivers Ganga and Yamuna as legal entities, basically giving them human rights. Now, while the Supreme Court did later overturn this as legally unsustainable, it just goes to show how broad and powerful the concept of the right to life and a clean environment can really be. Alright, pay super close attention to this number: 14. Under the right against exploitation, 14 is the absolute legal age limit under which children generally cannot be employed, especially in hazardous conditions like factories or mines. Exploitation is basically when someone takes unfair advantage of others. Think bonded labor or human trafficking. Children obviously need special protection, and this number 14 is your key to remembering the law against child labor. Got another number for you? And I've got a foolproof memory hook for your exam: 1098. That is the National Childline Helpline for children in distress. So how do you remember it? Just count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8. It's a really simple trick, but knowing it could quite literally help save a child's life. Plus, it's a perfect real-world application of the rights we're studying right now. We're wrapping up our rights with Article 32, the right to constitutional remedies. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar famously called this right the very soul and the very heart of the Constitution. Why? Because, well, rights are completely useless promises on paper if we can't actually enforce them, right? This right allows you to approach the Supreme Court if your fundamental rights are ever violated. It is the shield that protects all your other rights. Alright, Section 3, our fundamental duties. We've talked a lot about what the country owes us. Now, let's pivot to what we owe the country. So, if we look at the history, you might actually be surprised to learn that when our constitution began back in 1950, it had 0 fundamental duties listed. None. It wasn't until 1976 that 10 duties were added under Article 51A, basically to remind citizens that rights come with responsibilities. Later on, in 2002, an 11th duty was added, which requires parents to ensure education for children aged 6 to 14. These duties include things like respecting the national flag, protecting the environment, and promoting harmony. Now, while they aren't directly enforceable in court like your rights are, they absolutely are our moral and social responsibilities. To truly understand duties, we've got to look at some ancient Indian vocabulary, which, by the way, often pops up on the test. First up is dharma. Now, while we often translate it simply as duty, it has a much wider meaning. Dharma is that which is beneficial to people and society. It's all about doing what sustains and uplifts everyone around you. Next is this really beautiful concept of rina or debt. Historically in India, duties weren't just seen as strict boring rules. They were viewed as deep interconnected societal debts. We owe rina to nature, to our ancestors, to our parents, and to our fellow humans, simply by the act of being born. Repaying these debts is exactly what creates a deeply connected and caring society. And finally, we have adhikara, which relates to rights. But I want you to contrast this with our modern universal rights. In ancient texts, adhikara actually depended on an individual's capacity or competence. If you were competent to do a task, you had the right or the authority to do it. Modern democracy shifted this entirely to guarantee basic rights to everyone, regardless of their capacity. But understanding this ancient root shows us exactly how our ideas of rights and duties have evolved over time. Okay, Section 4. Fighting discrimination with inclusion. Let's see the real-world application of all these rights and duties. Discrimination is, well, it's mistreating someone based on their identity, and it creates massive social barriers. But look at the historical heroes who fought back. In the mid-19th century, Savitribai Phule faced terrible abuse just for belonging to a so-called lower caste. Yet, she persisted with her husband to establish one of the very first schools for girls. Then there's Annadibai Joshi, who was married at age 9 and tragically lost a baby at 15 due to poor medical care. She defied immense social disapproval to travel abroad and study medicine. These historical figures lived their duties and fought for their rights, literally paving the way for all of us. So, how do we fight discrimination today? Through inclusion. As your teacher, I want you to understand that inclusion goes far, far beyond government reservations. It is the deliberate, everyday action of making sure no one is left behind. It means removing physical barriers by installing ramps and providing braille books. It means creating a classroom and a society where people of all languages, castes, and religions feel genuinely welcomed and valued. And that brings us to Section 5, Summary and EduRev app. We've covered a ton of ground today, class. Let's lock in this knowledge right before we wrap up. Alright, here's your rapid fire review. Take a mental snapshot of these 4 pillars for your exams. Rights. These are the justified claims needed to live with dignity. Duties. The responsibilities we owe to our society and nation. Discrimination. The unfair treatment based on identity, which directly violates our core constitutional values. And inclusion. The deliberate act of ensuring equal access and belonging for absolutely everyone. Look, if you take away just one big picture concept from my class today, make it this. Rights and duties are 2 sides of the exact same coin. You cannot fulfill a right while ignoring your fundamental duties. If you want the right to express your opinion, you have the duty to listen to others respectfully. Building a peaceful democracy isn't automatic. It requires your active choices and a deep sense of empathy every single day. Thank you so much for learning with me today. To master this topic and access more amazing content, chapter notes and mock tests, make sure you download the EduRev app.